Hello and welcome to the first ever uh, bands, beers, and FPL chat. Got it right that way.
Hey, don't forget.
So give you a wee bit of background. We're going to be doing every week, maybe one video, possibly two, depending on time. We'll see what we can get on. And we're going to talk about one band, one beer each of our recommendations, and then we're going to talk about all things FPL. Hopefully, give you some useful information to use in the season ahead. That'll be mainly Danny, probably not me.
We'll see
Yeah.
about that.
So
Useful
yeah,
as.
if you can follow us on Twitter, which is at Bands Beers FPL. It's at Bands Beers FPL, all one word.
And since you're on the YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit that button.
Yeah, it definitely helps us. And even if you don't like the content, even if you could give us a like, that would be awesome. I'm sure you will, though. Yeah, cool. So we're going to jump straight in. To start off with Danny's pick of his band for this week. So Danny's a music expert going forward. And in case you're wondering, we are both big alternative music fans. So we might be a little bit more alternative side, but we will try and even it out if we can, because he's got a wide taste. So I'm sure he'll pick some other ones as well. But anyway, what have you got for us this week?
Certainly not limited to rock and metal, but we're starting off with something that
Yeah.
a little bit heavy. Band I've chosen are called Brutus. You can see them on the screen just now, hopefully. I recently seen them at a music festival called Mad Cool in Madrid. Just very briefly caught them, but I loved the sound and checked them out once I came back and totally fell in love with them. So they're a three-piece from Belgium. The lady here is the singer and the drummer, which you don't see many drummer vocalists in music at all these days. So I thought that was really cool. They've got a new single out recently called Dust, which you can see here, which I'm a big fan of. They're coming to the UK in November, I think between the 16th and 22nd. They're going to be in Glasgow on the 18th at Audio. Definitely worth checking out. Vibe-wise, they're sort of like post-hardcore, a wee bit proggy. I would say sort of sound like bands like Svalbard. I don't know if you've heard of them, Sean. We've not really spoke about them, but the Svalbard, Mutoid Man, Ithaca are three bands I would sort of say we're fans of. And yeah, check them out. We'll get them tagged in our tweets and on the YouTube. We'll put the link in the video as well. So
Yeah, and as soon as we get a bit more technical, we'll probably try and play each band each week if we can, let you hear them, a little bit of them before we carry on. So awesome. So that'll be our band. Now we're going to talk a little bit about our beer of the week. So what have you got this week, Danny? What delicious delight?
This week, drinking out of my lovely Bleed From Within glass. Another shout out to a band, a really good Scottish metal band. I've got Overtone Ruby Jewel, which is a pomegranate, raspberry, and cranberry Berliner Weiss. I'm pretty keen on sours in the summer. It's a really nice drink, like nice fruity sours. Overtone really smashing it out of the park just now. They're from Clydebank in Glasgow. Excellent for big bubble IPAs, really hoppy and just thick and juicy and hazy. Gotta love that haze, as your mate would say. Yeah, big fan of Overtone. That's all I'm seem to be drinking these days, and that's what we've got. Ruby Jewel.
I'm a huge fan as well. Big, definitely one of the better breweries in Scotland at the minute. IPA specialist as well. So for me, I've kind of gone along the sour route as well. I've gone for sour specialists, which are the amazing Vault City. So they are East Coast, based in Edinburgh. They were based in Dundee, but they just moved down to a new sort of purpose-built brewery in Edinburgh recently, and they've they've just done their peach and passion fruit Bellini, which is just perfect for warm weather. So on days like this, I couldn't think of anything better. That's exactly what you want, a little bit of refreshment. And I definitely recommend checking them out. They do a really good Iron Brew sour, which is top notch. They've actually I think they're going to do a second one called Iron Brew Extra, which is even more interesting.
Will that be lower calorie somehow? Like
no. It's actually extra strength. I think they're going for. I think that's what the extra.
If they could crack that, like 0 calorie sour beers, I'd love that.
Yeah, definitely help the waistline for both of us, I think. But so we should probably jump into FPL because that's what we're here for, and we obviously want to help out people that we can. Like I say, Danny's a bit more of an expert than me because he tends to finish higher up in our private league. Every time, always seems to put me at the post, which I don't know if it's just he comes into his own in the latter part of the season or I'm terrible, which is more likely. But yeah, so first up, we've got your team, and then we're going to talk about mine. So let's see your team and give us a little bit of
Okay,
chat.
so I'll just share my screen, let you see what we've got. So this is the 15-man squad at the moment. I would take it with a bit of pinch of salt because it's getting tinkered with and changed every single day. At the moment, I'm looking at the Salah-less team, the no Salah, which might be a big risk, but that's not what we're looking at. But two goalkeepers, the two Brighton goalkeepers, Robert Sanchez and his understudy Steele. Across the back, we've got three very obvious ones in Reece James, Trent Alexander-Arnold, and João Cancelo. Massive point scorers from last season. They were straight in my team, and I don't think I'll be changing them. Potentially James to Chilwell, but we'll see how pre-season unfolds. Kieran Trippier and Nico Williams. And then we've moved on to midfield. We've got Mason Mount, Andreas Pereira, Neto, and then the two controversial ones are maybe the Luis Diaz instead of Salah, and then Kevin De Bruyne instead of Haaland or Mahrez. And up top, we've got Gabriel Jesus, who's looking like he's going to be a kind of an essential pick, either him or Saka, and Harry Kane. And then we've got the young boy Taylor from Nottingham Forest. So it's a bit of an array of the two big premiums in there, a couple of 8 million midfielders. It's a strong defence. Still a work in progress though. There's still quite a few players on my radar that can slot in here. But that's where we're sitting at the moment with 2 weeks to go.
So let's talk a little bit about the team, because obviously we spoke a lot about our picking our teams, and we talk a lot and converse and deciding who we're going to pick, and we spoke a lot about certain players being included and stuff like that. One of the big talking points, which we probably will get onto later on as well, but I'll maybe pick up a wee bit on it just now. KDB versus Salah. I'm quite excited about this. I'm very much a KDB proponent. Love Salah. He's usually always in my team, but I'm just wondering, I mean, don't get me wrong, we both will probably end up both having Salah in our team, no doubt, when we go safe. But why KDB, do you think, just at the minute over Salah?
Well, it's a bit reactional since the fact that he scored 2 goals last night in a pre-season friendly. But looking at my phone before we came on here, Salah scored against Leipzig in a friendly, so they're both putting goals in pre-season, so that's not helping the decision. Like you said, like Salah's a go-to. Like every single season, he's the first player in my team. I don't know why there's a slight doubt this year. I don't know if it's just seeing a lot of other people, or maybe like going between the premiums. There's so many to choose from. There's so many options that are going to score you like 200 points. KDB, I feel quite fancy him because I'm quite scared of going for Haaland. Obviously, we've not seen him in a Man City shirt yet. We could see him in the Community Shield next week, but I want that Man City coverage. And my previous drafts were revolving around Mahrez taking penalties, but De Bruyne just knocks him out of the park. He gets so many points. He's going to play every week he's fit. So if I was going to go without Haaland, I'm going to go KDB, and you can't afford Salah and KDB really without mucking your whole team structure up. So I feel like it's a little bit reactive just now, and maybe just thinking a little bit about Salah's second half of last season form. It was a little bit wishy-washy after what happened in the Africa Cup of Nations. Lost a couple of finals as well at the end of last season. So I don't know. I'm just now on KDB. 2 weeks to go. We say it's still 50-50. It's going to be a tough goal.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the big ones for me. I think, like we spoke about before, it's always thinking about like how safe do you want to play it, how unsafe do you want to play it, and this is something we're going to talk about a little bit when we talk about future proofing your team. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I noticed some other interesting picks you've got in the team as well. So obviously, the sort of Kane Haaland debate is a big one up front, and you've sided with Kane, but that's obviously come at a cost because you don't have Son in your team. So, how does that play out in your head? Like, why pick Kane ahead of Son? We've obviously spoken a little bit about why not Haaland, but going on, last season, obviously it's 50-50 a lot of the time with the two. Do you think Kane's going to step up this season under Conte and really be a lot better than he was last season?
Possibly. I don't see him being any better than Son. I don't see Son really being any better than him. I think that both of them will be excellent point scorers throughout the whole year. They'll even each other out. If you were to pick one at the start and keep them to the end, they'll probably be about the same. I think for me, going with Kane now is going back to that Haaland factor. If I wanted to go Son in that KDB spot that I've got just now, then I'm going to need to have that premium striker of Haaland, who I'm not that convinced about. I have been tinkering with having Son in midfield and not having Haaland up front, going something like Son, Mahrez, Salah, and then just like Jesus as my highest striker, most expensive striker. But just now, I do feel like Kane's going to hit the ground running. I feel like he had a good season last year, a good strong finish. He's getting so many assists every season now. Like, he's not just a goal scorer. His range of passing is unbelievable. It's just like what we've seen with like goal scorers 12 years ago and like De Bruyne now. I think he's coming onto a different game. So normally I wouldn't touch him with a barge pole at the start of the season. All that Kane doesn't score in August like who do, but I feel like this season I'm kind of tempted by him. There's also the fact that if I do go for him and then Haaland hits the ground running, does play in game week 1, then I can easily switch to him. And then I know it would be a point hit. I could switch De Bruyne to Son if I wanted to, or I could wait till game week 3 or something. So I feel like there's a bit of movement in there that's easy to make.
So we also spoke about the goalkeepers, which is a thing that me and you spoke about quite extensively. So in case people don't know, Danny's a big Chelsea fan, and one particular player who stood out. I mean, you've obviously got the James, which a key player. I think a lot of people are going to go in for. Mount is an interesting one, which we'll maybe come back to. But what about the goalkeeper? We mentioned you've got currently got the Brighton goalkeepers, but I know Mendy is in your thoughts, and I think there's reasons for that coming through with the signings you guys are making. So what's your thoughts around that? Like, how are you playing with it?
I always try and not have my blue tinted glasses on when I'm picking my team at the start of the year, not put in like triple Chelsea. But I feel like this year it is maybe warranted. There's a really good run of fixtures at the start. Strong finish last season, just making the team better this season. My keepers I've got just now, the 2 Brighton ones. Sanchez, I think, is an excellent goalkeeper. Brighton are just brilliant defensively on their day with the likes of Lewis Dunk. And I just feel like they've got clean sheets in them. So for £4.5 million, he's an excellent priced goalkeeper. So is Raya from Brentford. I think this time last week I had him and Balcom as my 2 keepers. But nearly every day I'm trying to figure out a way to have Mendy. The only thing I don't like about that, I do like to have a goalkeeper and a backup goalkeeper from the same team. I wouldn't do that with Chelsea because it would take up a place from their team to be having like a James or a Mount or a Havertz or something. So it would be Mendy plus a £4 million from another team. But Mendy, they're going to get clean sheets. Like Chelsea have signed Koulibaly. Apparently they're close to signing Koundé. Still got big Thiago Silva. Like James and Chilwell are fit. They've just got a really solid team, and I do feel like we're going to be keeping a lot of clean sheets in those opening 5, 10, 12 weeks. So I really do want to have a piece of the Chelsea defence. I'm tempted by that double defence. I think Mendy would be a good shout, but it's just getting that extra 0.5. So Mendy's 5 million compared to Sanchez being 4.5. So I think if you've got that 5 million, he's the goalkeeper you want to go for. But if you're trying to save a bit of money, then you're looking at Brighton or Brentford. That would be my 2 choices.
It's definitely interesting. Like, I think I've kind of toyed with that idea myself in terms of, every time you go over the whole fixture versus form thing and think about, how fixtures affect things and whether they'll pick up interesting points that way, because if they've got easier games, then surely clean sheets come into play. So things like Arsenal, as you'll see with my team pick in a minute, loom large in my thoughts, definitely in terms of when I was picking as well. So it's interesting. You've got some really interesting picks. Another one I wanted to just pick up on quickly to talk to you about before we go to my team. I'm quite interested in Neto. I know we spoke about it quite a few times, but I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was another player in your thoughts from Wolves that you were interested in. How did that come down, and how did it shape up in terms of the 2 that you decided to win out?
Neto and also Daniel Podence are the same price, 5.5 million midfielders. I thought Podence looked great last season. He's really underrated. However, Neto didn't really get a lot of minutes last season. I think he was injured for a lot of it, and he has been getting goals and assists in pre-season. So he's a brilliant enabler at that price. I just think he's going to be so highly owned. I'm not convinced on him. I've got him in there just now because I'm tempted. They've got some good fixtures in the first 8 weeks that you can alternate with other teams. Most of my week I've had Leon Bailey from Aston Villa, 5 million in my team. So there's my 0.5 that I could get Mendy in my team if I want to. But I'm kind of going between the 2. I think the more drafts that I see Neto in, might be inclined to go against them. I do want to have a couple of real differentials in my team there. So I don't know. We'll see how the rest of the pre-season goes. But he's in there for now. Podence, I think early on I was like, nah, I'm picking him instead of Neto. People are sleeping on him, but Neto's been outperforming him in pre-season so far, so he's in there. But he's at risk. Sorry.
So, any other points about your team that we maybe haven't talked about that you'd maybe want to raise? I know you've got Trippy
A
in
slight
there.
point that I thought about Mendy there, go back to is Koulibaly, both from Senegal, both been playing in that really good team that they've got. So they've obviously got an understanding already. I think losing Rudiger was a big thing, Christensen as well. But the Koulibaly factor already, and then if Koundé comes in, it's just strengthening them. I'm putting them in. I'm getting them. That's it. Neto, away you go. Bailey, in you come, so I can get Mendy. That's happening. As soon as we come off this call, we can do it.
I guarantee by the end of this video, you've changed your mind yet again.
Aye, well, that's just what happens. I'm so indecisive, but part of the game.
Brilliant. So we're going to my team now.
Yes.
Slightly different from yours, which is...
Go back to the screen, and we'll switch over to your team, which you so kindly sent me on Facebook. So hopefully you can see that all right.
Yeah.
Nope.
Zooming in out there. Yeah, so yeah, ignore the sort of vice captain and captain picks. I haven't settled on them yet. I think I've just left them as kind of default. But I've got Ramsdale in goal. Again, talking about that fixture, I think Arsenal have got a really good run coming up, and I think they could pick up some decent, hopefully clean sheets. And I thought Ramsdale towards the end of last season played really well and was becoming quite a good pick as a goalkeeper. So I've gone for this is a bit of an interesting one. I've kind of gone side rail, so I've not picked the obvious players. Like you'll notice, I haven't got Trent. I haven't got Reece James. I've not got Kane. I don't have Haaland, and I don't have Salah. So what I'm kind of looking at, again, this probably will change, and before you know it, I will be close to the template because I'll pick the safe picks as always. But for the minute, I'm playing with the idea of doing something a little bit different. I like the idea of Robertson against Trent. I think that last season Robertson was really coming into a game and doing some interesting stuff. But like you say, Trent's probably essential. I don't really know if I'll get away with that going forward. Perisic, we're going to talk about because you've got some interesting points that's maybe made me second guess my pick as usual. Chilwell versus Reece James is an interesting argument that we should definitely have a chat about. Bruno Gomares, I think it's just because last season I totally missed out. I got FOMO. I think this season Newcastle are going to be an interesting team. I do know there's a bit of problem with our fixtures, but luckily I think I'll be able to swap him in and out from the subs bench. Son is just for me essential. Like I think he's one of the best players in the game. I love having him in my team. Probably the first name on a team sheet, as they say. Luis Diaz. I'm interested to see how things go him this season because I think towards the end of last season he was really coming into his own. I'm interested to see how the points will play out and what will return. I've got Saka, obvious pick, great player for me, always does really well. Sterling, I'd put that in really just for an interest aspect because I feel like I'll be interested to see how he gets on and what happens with this Chelsea team in terms of what they do up front and where they're playing. I normally don't pick players that are new signings unless they're really obvious. But Sterling, like we say, has got the experience of having played for City in previous campaigns, so you know what you're going to get with him. Yeah, Jesus definitely begin to think he's probably. I mean, I think more than Haaland. I think Jesus for the start of the season is probably the most essential player. From what I'm looking at, I can't think of another player that really jumps out like he does. I'm now terrified he's going to be a massive disappointment, but I genuinely feel like he's going to be there. You'll notice the other boy I've got up front, based on just, I think mostly off your recommendations. I don't even think I've looked at him properly, but he kind of fit well with the team in terms of me squeezing players in. Lamptey, providing he doesn't have as many injury woes as last season, I think is another great pick, but we'll see what happens. Williams, obvious reasons, and then the boy Mitrovic, who seems to be the Championship's best ever striker, but when he comes up, will he be able to do the same? Who knows? So, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. I like it. I'll keep your team on the screen here just so we can kind of talk through it. Like,
that's when we pick it apart.
Yeah, let's do that. Because I think it's really good. Like, I like a lot of the picks. It's a team that I would be very comfortable with in game week 1, maybe bar a couple of picks. Like Ramsdale, excellent. Brilliant for save points, brilliant for bonus points. I do see Arsenal getting some clean sheets early doors. and that's what I should have mentioned in my team when I got Trippier. That's subject to change to possibly Zinchenko, same price. He's gone to Arsenal. He's potentially going to be playing in midfield or left midfield or left back. He can play anywhere really. So out of position defender's a great pick. Perisic, yeah. So we have spoke about him a little bit. Conte seems to have said that he's still nursing some injuries from the end of last season. If you look at some of the stats as well, I don't know them in my head, but I've seen it that he doesn't play any more than like 65, 75 minutes a lot of the time. And last season, he missed a lot of games even when he was fit. I just wonder if he's getting to that age that he's not going to be playing 30, 40 games a season. He's got stiff competition in Spurs, like their wing backs are just on fire. Like they were great last season. He's left, isn't he? So that would be Sessegnon, Davis. So he's going to be first choice, you would imagine. I would just approach him with caution, especially for 5.5. Like you can get some other players for that, and then maybe just keep an eye on him. You could start like a Trippier or a Zinchenko or something, and then move to Perisic. You've got some money in the bank. Robertson and Chilwell, I love the picks, man. Like it's good to go against the grain a bit. I think with Robertson, I think you're saving 0.5 as well. Chilwell was definitely in the box more than James last season whenever the games he played. So, and Chilwell's going to be the same side of the pitch as Sterling. I think they'll work really well. So I think he's a great pick. I'm definitely tempted to move along to Chilwell. Bruno, excellent at the end of last season. Kind of tempted by him as well. I'm just a little bit wary. I'm not sure if he's going to start a bit deeper this season. I'd like to see where they're at pre-season, what sort of formation they're playing. Son, no brainer. If you're going to go for if you can fit him in, get him in. Like, fantastic. Diaz, we've talked about him briefly. Well, Diaz is a great Salah cover. He's going to get goals this season. Jota's injured at the start of the season, so it's definitely going to be Salah. So it's going to be Salah and Nunez and Luis Diaz at the start. Saka on penalties, excellent pick. Sterling, as you said, you know what you're going to get. The only downside for me is I think he's a bit overpriced. I would like him to be about 8-9. Undav, good goal scorer last season. He's going to be in a Brighton team that are starting to score more goals. I think he'll play up top with Mopey. I'm quite happy with him. And then your bench is great, man, because they're all playing. You're not getting any fodders that aren't coming on. So you've got good options as soon as you've got an injury or a tough fixture to a player that you've got in your 11. So I think it's a strong draft. Like there's wee bits that you can work on, but we'll talk it through.
I mean, you know what's going to happen. It will change, and I'll probably go pretty template towards the start of the season. You know, Salah will suddenly creep in. We did talk about KDB, and I'm definitely keen to sort of fit him in somewhere. The reason I picked that team was just mainly for talking points. It's players that I like. I knew we'd be able to talk a little bit about the idea of the side rule. So picking players that will benefit. You know, Man City players that will benefit if Haaland starts and plays well. Who's going to get the assists? You know, it's going to be KDB and stuff like that. Robertson, I was interested in because, you know, he tends to play well when, you know, Trent's maybe not, or sometimes they play well together as well. So, yeah, just a few more interesting picks. But, yeah, definitely by this time, probably in the next couple of days, I'll have changed that again. But, yeah, thought it'd be interesting to have.
I like it. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. Cool. So next we're going to do a little section we just call, like, I'd say team talk, really. I mean, hopefully not stepping anybody's toes or stealing that idea. I'll need to check to make sure we haven't. But yeah, it's just talking points, I think, that I really like the idea of. So I'm going to pick them with you, being the kind of slightly better player, slightly, emphasis on slightly. The defence aspect, right? So a few things in defence, which obviously we've talked a little bit about, but double Chelsea and double Liverpool, being two of them. Technically double Arsenal. I mean, I'd love to have Tierney in my team, just whether he can get fit, especially like you mentioned with Zinchenko coming in. But what about you know, having Reece James and Chilwell, and Trent and Robertson? Because as we know, time and time again, defence does tend to bring in a lot of points when the teams are playing well, because you get the clean sheet, the assists, that kind of stuff, the bonus points. So what do you think about that? Would you recommend people going double Chelsea, double Liverpool, or even double Arsenal?
Kind of depends how your team's set up. I've got no problem with that at all. I think I've been looking at the double Chelsea because I kind of can't decide between Chilwell and James, and I feel like they're both capable of double digits any week. Chelsea get a clean sheet. One of those boys are probably going to get an assist or a goal. They're that good when they're on their game. So I like that. That's 12 million to own the two of them. Or if you're on a bit of a budget, maybe not get as many attacking returns, but you could look at Thiago Silva, Koulibaly, or somebody else. But James and Chilwell, brilliant for 12 million. Liverpool, if you're going to double on them, obviously you want to have Trent and Robbo. That's 14.5 million that's going to cost you, so it's a bit more than going double Chelsea. I think if you've got the space and you're sort of saving some money elsewhere, you're maybe not going for a Kane or a Haaland or a Son. You're going for Kulusevski and Mahrez and Jesus and stuff like that, just toning it down a bit. Why not? Yeah, because these guys are the same as Chilwell and James. Like, they're capable of getting these massive goals every week. Liverpool are obviously really strong at getting clean sheets. The Arsenal doubler, I think if I was going to do that, I would go with a defender and a goalkeeper. And like I said before, I'm quite keen on maybe Mendy and a Chelsea defender. With Arsenal, yeah, Ramsdale, and then maybe a Tierney, 5 million, good price, cracking attacking threat, cracking attacking. So I think Arsenal's a good shout as well. Zinchenko, as we've already mentioned, like double on them, but I wouldn't double on their defenders. I'd maybe go with Ramsdale for the save points. Because if the clean sheet gets wiped out, like, he does get points for that. Whereas the other two teams less likely to get the clean sheet wiped out. So I would approach double Arsenal with a bit more caution, but if you've got the funds, double Liverpool, double Chelsea, all for it. Brilliant. Some teams out there have been seeing both. Double Liverpool and double Chelsea defences. That is what you call big at the back, and then the fifth defender's probably Cancelo. Like, probably got about 2 million left to spend the rest of your team, but that's a strong back five. Like,
yeah, I mean that's the interesting thing for me is like again, it's always like jiggling about because you can't always have every big player. It's just not feasible, and it's the thing you find every season that people are desperate to cram in as many premiums as possible. And sometimes it's just about hitting and watching the form. So like you were saying about sliding out Haaland for Kane or Kane for Haaland, like this is what we're going to talk a lot about with the future proofing idea, but just making sure that the picks that you have, you've got a second option that you can keep an eye on that it matches maybe the price level. So sometimes with that double defence, maybe if Liverpool don't start so well, it's much easier to drop down from Liverpool than it is to move up from, say, Arsenal if you're going cheaper. So things like that are things you obviously need to think about. Speaking about budgets, my next one is what we like call the Cancelo conundrum. I love him. Like, I think he was in my team pretty much the entirety of last season. I think the price rise this season is slightly worrying. I think it's quite a lot to put into one player, especially like in defence. I mean, but what's your thoughts on that? Like, Pep Roulette being a big thing. Maybe not as much last season. I think he played quite a lot of the games. I don't think he really dropped out as much as a lot of us would expect him to. But what's your thoughts on him? Are you keen on him?
Yeah. He's in my team and he's staying in my team, and he was in it for most of last season. I think I feel like he's fairly immune to Pep Roulette. Like, he can play right back and left back, so he can switch. There's not much competition for him. Like, Zinchenko's gone. They might be buying Marc Cucurella from Brighton, who's a left back. Okay, he was slot in there, but I still think Cancelo would be first choice. He can go to right back, so if they play Cucurella left, play Cancelo at right back, he's a far more attacking, better asset than Kyle Walker. So I just think he's a no-brainer for me anyway. Like, the amount of shots in the box he was having, like whatever the stats were saying, he had more shots in the box than most of the City attackers in the full season. Shots on target as well. He's brilliant. He's unreal. I really wish he was at Chelsea. So for me, he's a no-brainer. But again, it goes back to like we were just talking about the defensive prices. Depends on what structure you're going for the rest of the team. If you're wanting to have the two Chelsea or a Chelsea and a Liverpool and a couple of this and that, it's maybe hard to fit in. But for me, I would prioritise him. I think he's the real deal.
Yeah, I think there's an argument in my head to say that he's a better pick than Trent. I know that's controversial, but I think a lot of people probably would agree, and not just Man City, Liverpool fans. Like I think Man City defence tends to be a bit more solid and let in less goals. So yeah. Definitely.
Although like on Trent's side, it's the set pieces. Like, he takes corners, he takes free kicks, he shoots from range. Cancelo is penetrating, crosses, shooting in the box, shooting from just outside the box. So there are pros and cons to both of them, but I would just say just buy both of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've just got a vendetta against Trent after picking him as my triple captain last season when everybody else went Salah, and it pretty much derailed my season. So
we could probably do a full episode on that entire.
Yeah, that's going to happen. By the way, I actually do think that I need to get over my trauma of it. So talking about it on here will probably help. Okay, midfield. Yeah, this is probably one of the best arguments I think you're going to have this season because everybody's going to have a thought on it. Salah versus KDB. I know last season it's slightly different because KDB had injuries and slight problems. This season seems a bit different, and with the attacking threat they've got up front now, he's really going to be a part of that big play. And Salah slightly lessened maybe by not knowing his forward teammates as well as it has done in previous seasons where they've had that kind of magnificent three. It's done so well for them for the past couple of seasons. And also, if you look at form, KDB coming into form towards the end of last season, does he carry that through? Salah, dipping badly in form at the end of last season, and just not looking the same player really, like they were used to. Does that carry through as well, or does it flip again and Salah is your, start of the season that we normally expect from him, and KDB maybe just doesn't until he hits the ground running a bit later? What do you think?
It's hard, man. Right, so it's not just Salah versus KDB, it's Salah versus KDB versus Son. There's three of these amazing premiums that you need to think about. I think we spoke about it like even earlier on, just about it's also not just about the midfield premiums. You've got Kane and Haaland, so you've kind of got to decide what you're doing. You can only really afford two of them without messing up the rest of your team. So are you going with two big premium midfielders and none of the strikers? Or are you going 1-1? It kind of depends on that. For me, as we can obviously see my team, from earlier on, I've got KDB in there just now, and I feel like for good reason. Like the pre-season friendlies has obviously shown he's on some form, but so Salah, the end of last season, he was just unreal. Like those 4 goals he scored in that one game. So I feel like he's the main man. Like whenever City aren't playing that well and they're up against a tough team who are sitting back, he just drags them through. Like takes the corners, takes direct free kicks, hits the ball from anywhere. He can shoot from 30, 40 yards, pops up in the box at Lampard. I think he's just the one that's going to get the points. So at the moment, he's shading it for me because I'm a little bit scared of Haaland because he's new. So I mean, if it was like just purely Salah against KDB, I can't just put a pin in it and be like KDB because Salah, there'd be severe FOMO. But like you said, there's a change to the front line. Like Firmino's kind of going out in the picture now. Mane's gone. Luis Diaz is excellent, but he's still a new player to Salah. Darwin Núñez, we don't really know much about what he's going to be like. So they are a team slightly transitioning. And then Man City just won the league last season. So it's another season where Liverpool have gone through all that graft. They didn't win the league. They didn't win the Champions League. They won the FA Cup and the League Cup. Got 2 boring games against Chelsea that Chelsea should have won, and then they won in penalties. So we're not bitter about that. Not at all. So yeah, short answer, it depends what you're doing, how many you're going for. If you're going for 3, I would go for Salah plus KDB or Son, and then Haaland or Kane. I think 3 previews is a little bit too much. It leaves you short elsewhere.
So I think for me, that's definitely it's one of those ones where you can flip a coin essentially. I don't think you're going to miss out too much. Where I would be looking, like we were talking about the side wheel thing, is looking at the players around them. So if you think Núñez is going to hit the ground running, and Diaz is going to be there as well, you want Salah there to, because he's going to be providing chances, goals. He's going to be scoring. He's going to be feeding off them. Same with KDB. If you think Haaland's going to hit the ground running as well, then you've got KDB again is going to be the provider. He's going to be assisting, even if he's not scoring. He's going to be assisting, picking up bonus points. So I think you could probably go either way with both of them. So really interesting debate. Probably the one that everybody will be having at this point. Well, we'll go on to the next one, which I think is probably just as big a debate. So strikers. I know we were going to talk about mid-price heroes in midfield, but we'll probably just do that in targets, probably easier. But two questions for strikers in the strike position up front. You've got number 1, which we've already spoke about a little bit, touched upon. Do you think Jesus is key? Do you think he's one of them, probably the most essential pick? Or do you think Kane and Haaland are slightly more essential than him? So first question is Jesus essential? Should everybody be picking him? Second question is he more essential than, say, Kane or Haaland?
I think everyone should be picking Jesus. I think it's either him or Saka. That's the 2 players from Arsenal. You'd want one or the other, both the same price. It's a debate yet to see who's going to be in penalties. Obviously, it was Saka towards the end of last season. We're thinking it could be Jesus, so we'll see. But think Jesus has always been brilliant for Man City. Whenever he's played consistently, it's not been very often he's got consistent starts, but he's been in the points. He's been scoring, so he's now in a team where he's going to be the main man. He's a number 9. He's going to be getting fed by some excellent players with Saka and Smith Rowe and Odegaard and all that. So they've got a really good team. So I think you've got to, and especially with his high ownership, everyone's going to have him at the start. Their fixtures are great at the start. If you miss out on him, if you don't have him, you have to have Saka. And I'm edging towards Jesus because I don't think there's as many good options in the strikers. Like with an 8 million Saka, you could be going with Mahrez, Foden, Luis Diaz, Mason Mount, all these kind of players. Whereas up top, in the 8 million or less, you've got Mitrovic, who we don't know how he's going to be. Like Solanke, Callum Wilson gets injured every 2 seconds. We don't know how Newcastle are going to be this season. So I think for that price bracket, if it was me, which it is me because I've got him in my team, I'd be saying Jesus over Saka. He's got to be. I think he's going to hit the ground running this year.
Yeah, so I mean, my thoughts on it are, Haaland I'm interested in, but again, there's always that part of me that's really wary about starting players that don't have, Premier League experience. I don't subscribe to the idea that players can't hit the ground running. We've seen it season after season, and I particularly don't subscribe to the idea that German players can't go from the Bundesliga to, the Premier League just based on a few Chelsea signings. So just to get that dug in, but yeah, I think I think it's an interesting one. I definitely think Jesus has got the pedigree, the experience. Now that it's going to be all about him and not rotation. He's not going to be. I think it'll be an interesting one this season. I'm mildly terrified that he's going to flop, but I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think he'll do well. I think Arsenal seem to be shaping up to be a really interesting team this season. So
he is also at that price point where you can replace him with some of those players that I just mentioned. Like there's Havertz as well, who's 8 million. Like you can downgrade him and put your money elsewhere or upgrade to someone. But I think going back to even the last time talking about Salah versus KDB versus Son versus Haaland versus Kane, we need to revisit this like next week or the week after because we've got Man City are playing Bayern Munich either tomorrow or the next day or something like that. Pep said that Haaland is ready for some minutes because he's been still with a bit of a niggling injury. And then they've got Liverpool in the Community Shield next week. So we've got these 2 games to sort of see if he's going to be featuring. Like he could bang in a hat-trick against Liverpool and then we're all of a sudden ripping our teams to shreds, putting Haaland, buy KDB, like whatever. So I think the big premiums we need to come back to, but Gabriel, Jesus up front. Yeah,
cool. So that brings us really neatly on to the next topic, which I'm really keen on, especially for new players, which I find every season, if you're starting your team, it's really important to what I would say future-proofing. So one strong example of that, which I want to just quickly get out of the way because we're going to talk about it anyway, is bench options. So a perfect example, we've seen a lot of teams, we asked for a lot of teams to be sent into our Twitter account, which is at Beer Bands FPL, so you remember. And people been sending a lot of teams in, and while the kind of first 11 looks great, like the benches are all filled with fodder, and like realistically for me, I think you really need to have 2 strong bench options. Maybe not strong, but you at least want players that are going to be playing, just in the odd chance that you end up with 2 or 3 injuries in the week 1, and then you're suddenly having to take hits, spend money we don't need to spend. It becomes 2-3 transfers you don't really need to be making. So yeah, like what's your thoughts on that? I know we spoke about it and you feel quite strongly about it, but should it be 3 good bench players, or should it be 2 really strong picks, and then maybe if you really need the budget, fire in like a 4 or a 4.5 in that third slot? But like, what do you think?
It's tough. We've done a poll on our Twitter recently about do you like to fill your bench with all cheap fodder, non-starters or starters, or a mix of both. I think starters was the winner, but very closely. To me, I prefer to have 3 nailed on or almost nailed on starters. I'm not against having both, but I would only have 1 complete non-starter. I mean, nobody's a complete non-starter. Like an injury could happen and then all of a sudden somebody's playing. But to me, I think you've got to have options, not only for just thinking about injuries, but you've got players in your team. Like most people are going to have someone like Andreas Pereira or Neto that we mentioned, Nico Williams, some of these players, or Lamptey, Cucurella, players that play for the bottom half teams maybe, or the 8th, 9th teams. So they're going to come up against tough teams like Man City away, Liverpool away, where you're not really wanting your team. You want to have someone else there, so that could be the week that so-and-so from Nottingham Forest is playing at home to Fulham, so there you go, good game for them. So I always like to have at least two. And the sort of bench, the go-to bench we keep seeing at the moment, which is very similar to mine, is Nico Williams, wing back, 4 million for Nottingham Forest. He's going to play every week, pretty much. And we've yet to see what they're going to be like, but from 4 million, you can't complain, especially as an attacking defender. Andreas Pereira, mentioned a few times, 4.5 million playing as an attacking midfielder for Fulham, who, as we've seen last season, very attacking team. They've got Mitrovic, so he's going to be playing just behind them. Excellent pick, just came from Man United as well, as we said. And then your boy that I mentioned a while ago is Undav, Dennis Undav. He's in so many teams. That's the sort of go-to 3 starters. But then we're seeing a lot of people who are picking Sam Greenwood from Leeds, Cameron Archer from Aston Villa as their 2 4.5 million strikers. So, like, if their Kane or their Haaland or whoever they pick does get injured, they don't have a striker. Like, obviously you can transfer them out, but it's nice to have options on your bench. I don't like these strikers that are just not going to get games. There was one from, who was it we had a few years ago that just wasn't getting any game points. He played so well in pre-season. I can't remember who it was. Everyone put him in the team and he just sat there. We all had to get rid of him. Pointless. So I'd approach it with caution. I would say if you can go for your 3 starters, do it. But avoid having to, because it's just going to put you into trouble and you're going to be taking point hits after a few weeks.
Yeah, I think like for me, it's you really need to have at least 2 solid picks, because you've got to think about rotation depth, you know. So if you really desperately need the budget, you know, then fair enough, sticking one in that third slot. But you've got to remember as well, like when we were talking about future proofing, that bench is going to remain quite there for at least, you know, 6, 7, 8 weeks, because it's going to take you that long before you can start transferring, because you're going to be fighting fires, you're going to be reacting to things happening, you're going to be wanting to jump on bandwagons with other players. So your transfers are going to be getting chewed up quite quickly and doing all those things. You know, the last thing you're going to want to do with your transfer is try and transfer out you know, a low price substitute pick because he's not playing and you're suddenly realizing that you've got dead wood on your team. So yeah, but definitely think about that when you're picking your team. Don't go with the gold rush and just pick all, you know, premium players and then leave yourself short. Try and think about spreading the funds where you can. Just remember that even the best players, you know, these premium picks, they're not going to play amazing every week. There's going to be dips and troughs, and you know, a solid smaller budget player can still provide really good points for you, especially in those weeks where you need them. So yeah, that's one of the things I really wanted to talk about. The other one I'm quite interested in, and I did a little bit last season, just towards the end, after I think it was the second wild card, but the keeper rotation. So is it worth spending that budget on 2 4.5 million keepers who are both going to play every week, are both in fairly solid defences? You know, is it worth having that, you know, 2 keepers that you can flip between based on fixtures and the hunt for those extra kind of clean sheet points and bonus points? Or do you think that's just madness and you should just stick to 1 keeper and, you know, and in the games where you're tough games, you just hope for the best?
I like it, the idea. Like as I said before, I do like to have 2 keepers from the same team, but it's not essential. Going between like 2 4.5s is a good idea. Just look and see what teams are sort of going against each other, who's having a good fixture when the other one's having a bad fixture. I think from memory looking, I think Newcastle, Brighton, and Leicester are some teams that sort of go, and Wolves as well, that go well against each other. Whenever Wolves have got a tough game, one of the other teams have got a good fixture. So look into that, like ones that you can rotate. Henderson from Nottingham Forest, I've been seeing him a lot alongside Sanchez, which is good. To me, I just feel 2 of the 4.5s is 9 million. Whereas just now I've got a 4.5 and a 4, it's 8.5, so I can spend that somewhere else. Unless I go for like Mendy and a 4, which is 9 as well. So kind of just again going back to keep repeating this, it depends on your team structure and what premiums you're going for. But I do like that idea because you're never going to be caught short, because like you never want to transfer goalkeepers throughout the season. So say it comes to a Thursday and you find out that Mendy's injured, you don't have Kepa as your second goalkeeper in your team because you've got 2 other Chelsea players in your team probably. So you're stuck. So then you have to use your free transfer to take out Mendy for Sunday. So it's a cracking shout. I would say safe bet if you can do it is 2 from the same team. Then if Sanchez doesn't play, then Steele will play. Or like you're saying, go for 4.5 millions and just play them off each other. Look at the fixtures properly.
So a good thing that we always talk about is tools to use when you're doing this. So if you are new, I mean, I'm presuming some of you might be, the fixture difficulty rating on the app is really good for this. You can click through and check what teams are playing what in terms of fixtures. So sometimes teams will be, is it green, red, and I think it's orange.
Yeah, I'm just going to show actually.
Yeah, and what that does is it just means you can actually see which fixtures are rated as the most difficult to the least, and which teams are playing in that. And what you can do is you can use these tools to sort of help pick. Yeah, so you see FDR there, it's got it there. There's also another FDR as well that in the actual fixture section where you can see it laid out like a table with the teams. And it just means that you can click through. Have you got it there? Yeah, fixtures. Yeah, and then just at top there, FDR.
There, yeah.
Yeah, and so you can see there, like, it means you can immediately start planning in terms of fixtures. And if you actually click, the top of game week 1 where the arrow is, it'll put every team in that game week 1, but it says if you go back. So see the wee arrow at the top of game week 1 under the 5th of August.
Yeah, got you. Yeah. I don't normally use this. Oh yeah, it was
actually good. So there you go. You're getting all the teams that have got green there, and you can see as they go along, like which teams it changes. So you can do that each week, and what that does is just means you can guide yourself by. So for instance, for the first 4 weeks, you could play for the first 4 weeks. You play the Arsenal keeper. And then have a Ramsdale and have a switch to Bournemouth for the next 3, if that makes sense. So it's quite a useful tool. It's one of those ones that you can actually use to pick players for transfers, future proofing your team. Thinking about fixtures going forward, when people talk about fixtures versus form, certain players will be playing really well, but fixtures are really important. And I think last season, I really saw fixtures come in and be important in terms of knowing which teams were going up against who and who was playing what. It just means that if a team's got a weak opponent that week, it just means that you've got a better chance of picking the right players for that. So that's one of the really useful tools for fixtures. The other is probably Ben Crellin on Twitter. If you search for Ben Crellin, he's really good at just picking out, when fixture changes are coming up. He usually lets you know in advance as well. Really helpful with sort of chip strategies and things like that going forward. So it's another thing I would think about when you're picking your team. If you've never done this before, if you haven't. One other point I was going to say to you as well, Danny. So each season we see people desperately firing in players like we spoke about, Conte with sort of Chelsea is a good example. Defensive midfielders, the unsexy positions basically, because they think these players are great but actually don't get a lot of points. So what's your thoughts on that? Do you, what's the best way for people to sort of avoid that if they've not really played FPL before?
Call them the 2-pointers, the 2-point men that just play every week and they get those 2 points, maybe the odd assist, like Golo Kante, Declan Rice. My memory's gone, but the players in name. I mean, Nenny from Arsenal was one. Seen him in teams like he's not getting goals and assists. Like, calm down. I would avoid it. There's gems in there for the same price that you'll pay for these Kantes and Rice, like we've mentioned. Pereira and Jack Colback from Nottingham Forest can be relatively attacking. He's going to play and stuff. Just think about it a bit more. Like just because Kante gets man of the match in probably 50% of the games he plays doesn't mean he's a good FPL asset. There's no point. It's the same when you're approaching your defence. Like that's why you can see team players going for Chilwell, James, Alexander-Arnold, like these attacking fullbacks. Like you don't want to be like Van Dijk obviously scores goals and gets bonus points. I'm not saying he's a bad pick, but for a little bit extra you can get someone different. Or Matip as well is obviously a good shout. But just because the players are the strong leaders of men in that team doesn't mean they're going to be leading your team to any FPL glory. I would just simply look at it, like go back, and if you think a player's cheap, look at his stats, look at goals and assists. That's what you're looking for. It's not about performances and man of the match and stuff. There's so many pages that we will share on our Twitter that will give you loads of XGI, like expected goal involvement stats, where you can see like what they're expected to get this season, what they're expected to get game by game. And some of those obvious players that you think are brilliant, like Kante, they're not going to be getting a high XGI. So just think about it a bit more before you go for these cheap players. They've got to be worth it. They've got to have some clout about them.
Yeah, so I think like talking about the positions wise, so think about like I keep saying the word sexy, but like you think about those positions that are going to be doing more on in terms of attack. So even your defenders, you really want to have the wing backs, like guys like Tierney. We were talking a little bit about Reece James, Chilwell, Trent, Cancelo are all in there for a reason, and that's they're going to be pushing forward. They're going to be creating assists. They're going to be scoring, and that's really what you want. Same in midfield. You want attacking midfielders who are either going to be orchestrating the play, or they're going to be making assists. They're going to be scoring goals. They're going to be taking set pieces. Is another really good one. You know, if you can get penalty takers, get them in there. Up front, I find strikers are interesting. This is probably why I won't agonise too much on my strikers, because as shown by last season, you know, it's not they don't tend to be as essential as a lot of people think, because although they'll score goals, strikers tend to be a real form position, so they'll run for 5-6 weeks, score goals, and then they might not score again for another 3 or 4, and suddenly you've just got a player that's picking up the 2 points. So think about those positions. Don't get caught up in trying to pick centre halves. Don't get caught up in trying to pick, like we were talking about, defensive midfielders, and especially don't worry too much about strikers. Pick the ones that look like they'll score goals, but don't agonise over it. I think we've talked a lot about it in previous seasons. Some of the budget strikers are where everybody ends up going anyway, because you get the goals, but know for a fact if they don't score, it's not the end of the world, because you've got a lot of your money in the midfield. So yeah, that's kind of some of the things I was keen to talk about, because I know a lot of people who'll be starting afresh, or don't, maybe you're sort of the kind of player that gives up after a few weeks because you get annoyed because it's not going the way you're going. Spend a wee bit of time in the community, watch videos like from us, and you'll start to see patterns develop and ways to play, and it really helps you start doing well in your private leagues, and gives you a wee bit of the kind of banter points that Danny seems to get on every season. So,
but it's not just at the start of the season to think about these players. Like, a lot of people are reactive. If you're looking for somebody to transfer in and is on a budget, and then you see form in the FPL app, like Kovacic last season was getting transferred in so much. Like, he doesn't score many goals, but I think he scored like 2 in like 3 weeks, and everyone was transferring him in. Didn't score for the rest of the season. Rodri as well from Man City, defensive midfielder, does pop up with goals now and again, but you don't want to be taking a Man City place up with a player like that. Like, maybe you got the other ones and stuff to put in. So throughout the season, a lot of people do that, and I would just avoid that. Just because they're getting transferred in by a lot of people, it doesn't mean they're going to be someone you want to keep for a long time.
Yeah, and we talk about FOMO a lot, and I think you can be influenced quite easily with your picks, if which I've shown repeatedly, to my detriment. Stick with your gut. Like, we spoke about this a lot. Like, sometimes I've spoke like about this with you a lot, and sometimes I've even talked to you about players that you get annoyed about when they do well, and but yeah, try to think about, like, if you think a player's going to be worth it and you think he's going to get the points, then don't be talked out of it just because someone else is going big. Like, we spoke already about Haaland and Salah and how everybody says they're essentials, but we've already spoke a little bit about how we probably might not have either of them. And the team, there's always ways. Don't worry too much. There's only going to be set occasions, perhaps, with the chips, triple captain strategy and stuff, where players can really hurt you. But if you miss out one week, it's easy enough to fix the following week. You can flip between if you do your transfer strategy right. So yeah, don't get caught up in being sucked in by players, maybe centre halves that are scoring 2 goals one week, and get a massive point haul. They might not get another massive point haul for another 5 or 6 months. So yeah, don't get caught up in that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's one of the things I want to talk about majorly is future proofing, especially at this part of the season. Try and think about a set spine to your team, players that are going to get you the points, players you think will do well. Don't take too many gambles at this stage in the season. I don't think I wouldn't really, yeah, I'm talking about it. But I mean, what's going to happen? I'll change back to bloody template. But yeah, it's really important to think about that and try not to, especially when your players coming in. It gets exciting to think, oh yeah, this player's going to be amazing, but you also have to think about how they're going to adjust to the league, and how they're going to play. And it takes a wee while for anybody to get going, So That's the other one. So on to the really exciting section, which I know you've got some thoughts on, targets. So players that you think are maybe hidden gems, players that are interesting. We've spoke about some of them, obviously. Maybe players that you like the look of that you probably would put in your team, and like ID kind of those kind of players that we can pick out for people to maybe think about for their kind of drafts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Who you start off with?
Thoughts? Yeah, we put a tweet together last week about under the radar picks. Probably a different way of saying differential, but it was basically anyone under 10% owned at the time. We'll probably do a refresh of that when we come nearer to the game week 1 deadline. But players we had in that, we've already spoken about. One of them was Ramsdale. Ramsdale might be over 10% by now, but we know what he's like. I had Ruben Diaz from Man City. Was quite appealing. I did put him and Laporte into the tweet, but Aymeric Laporte is now injured for the start of the season, so he's not going to be fit. So Diaz, I think it's 6 million, strong, great for bonus points when you keep a clean sheet, and he can get goals in the box as well. So I feel like him, because everyone's going to be flocking towards Cancelo, and then I think if Cucurella does go to Man City from Brighton, he could be another popular pick. Diaz will probably be the next one. I think Laporte would be ahead of him, but Diaz is a nice option if you want to get in the Man City defence without stretching to Cancelo, who we said is quite expensive at 7 million. The 2 Brighton wing backs, Cucurella, as I said, might be going to Man City, so that's a different conversation. But Lamptey, who you've got on your bench, cracking for going forward, plays right wing back in a back 5, and I think he's just getting better season on season. He just needs to stay fit. If he stays fit at 4.5 million. Brighton have got a good set of fixtures for the first 10 weeks. He's going to get points. So I'd definitely keep an eye on him. Other players I had in the thread that had Mason Mount because he was owned by under 10%. I think that will grow. Mount's obviously on corners, some free kicks, takes penalties quite often when Jorginho's not in the pitch. But in that conversation, because of the same price, Havertz, although he's a forward, he seems to be on penalties as well. I think he's going to be the main man up front. He's going to start in the number 9 position nearly every week. There's Gallagher as well, 6 million. He's got to fit in somewhere. He's not going out on loan. I know he missed a penalty last night in a friendly. Shocking penalty. Basically, just passed it to the goalkeeper.
Oh man, if you've not seen this penalty, please go and look it up on Twitter because it's one of the worst.
He's obviously expecting the goalkeeper to dive, and then he's just passed it down the middle, and the goalkeeper's just been like, "Cheers, and thanks for the freebie." I hope that doesn't affect his confidence or his ability to get into the first 11, because I'd really like to see him playing alongside Kovacic or Kante or Jorginho. I don't know if he'll get into the front 3 too often, but we'll see. He's only 6 million, so see if he starts the start of the season. He's going to come on everyone's radar. He's such a cheap way to get into the Chelsea attack. Mahrez had in the tweet that we done, probably on penalties, only 8 million compared to the 12 of De Bruyne and 11.5 of Haaland. And he's got no competition on that right side anymore. So I really think he's going to be nailed on for the start of the season. Foden as well. I wonder where Foden's going to play, especially if Haaland might not be getting thrown in at the deep end. There's Grealish as well, but Mahrez is really, he's under 10%. I think he was only 5% last week. Fantastic pick if you're not going full winner with Haaland or KDB. And we keep talking about Brighton, and I think I said in the tweet, I was like, we're not secret Brighton fans. They've just got some good fixtures coming up, and I'm really attracted to some of the assets, like Leandro Trossard, the attacking midfielder. Pretty sure he's on penalties, especially when Mopé's not on the pitch. Takes free kicks, takes corners. He's their talisman. They're man that makes things go together. So Trossard's going to be very low owned, 6.5 million. Same sort of prices like Rashford and Eriksen at Man United, who can just go into speaking to them as well. But Trossard, I think, should be on some radars. He could be a good under radar player.
Just to cut in, because I really want to talk about Brighton, I'm really interested in them. So over the past couple of seasons, they've really been coming on sort of leaps and bounds in terms of, especially stealthing under the radar. I mean, that hammering they handed out to Man United last season was definitely eye-opening, depending on obviously the fact that people assume that Man United are terrible. But it's interesting to see you mention them, because they're one of those teams that a lot of people maybe don't look at, because they aren't the sort of team that people pick out, but they actually do have a lot of really big point scorers, and they do fly under the radar. And like what you've been talking about, it's one of those things that Brighton always seem to be in my thoughts at the start of the season, because defensively they're a solid unit, and they do have those explosive players that can play going forward, like we just mentioned, Lamptey and Trossard. So yeah, they're definitely worth keeping an eye on. I think that's definitely a good shout.
Yeah, my thoughts. 6.5 million to say about Rashford and Eriksen. Eriksen was in my team for a little bit last week. He's not featured in pre-season yet, which kind of worries me a bit. Rashford I do kind of like, but I'm not sold in Man United yet, so they're not really in my recommendations yet. Gundav from Brighton, we spoke about earlier on as well. He was someone that we chatted about. And I had something in my head there that's gone. We had Brendan Johnson from Nottingham Forest. Really like the look at him. He's 6 million as a forward. Plays in the wing. They've just bought a new player, Awon Yemi, I think, striker from Nottingham Forest. Keen to see how they start, but Johnson's definitely going in the radar. And the final one was Armando Broja, who was 5.5 million at 5 million, I think, at Southampton last season. He's 5.5 million as a Chelsea striker now, but he's very, very highly touted to go to West Ham. And I think he'll play in that team quite regularly. So he's definitely one that's going to be low owned for now, but I think he'll come on the radar big time.
What about Lingard potentially going to Nottingham Forest? Does that interest you? I mean, I don't know what price he'll go in at, but
yeah, it depends on the price really. Like Forest, I don't really know enough about, but if he's going to be like Brennan Johnson, I've seen for Wales in the playoffs, and he looked brilliant. So if he's going to go into that team with the new striker they bought, and they did score a lot of goals last season, so he's definitely an option.
Yeah, I think Johnson and Colbeck are two that I know from watching some of the championship games last season that I saw really stood out, and I know a lot of people are interested in them as well, so definitely worth keeping an eye on them. Right, I think that's probably perfect time to wrap up unless you get anything else. The only thing I would say, like we just said earlier at the start, if you can give us a like and a subscribe, it'd be great. We are relatively new to this, so sorry for all the kind of technical stuff. We're not got the green screens out yet or nailed all that kind of stuff, but we'll get there. And comment below, like if you've got ideas for maybe bands or beers that you think we should be checking out, and or other people, let us know either on Twitter or in the comments. And as if there's anything else you want to talk about, if you think there's videos or something that we could probably do for you, some of we maybe could put together a guide if we have time for what we talked about for starting off, the tools, the people to follow on Twitter. And while I'm talking about Twitter, can we just say thanks to FPL Arrow, Gaz, for giving us a shout out. Really helped us. So really, you should definitely go and follow him. Seems like a great guy. And yeah, anything else you want to talk about? Anything you think we've maybe not covered?
We'll be back with more content weekly. Bands, beers, FPL is what you want to go and get us on Twitter. And obviously like and subscribe to the YouTube page. So there'll be plenty more to talk about, loads more pre-season signings and stuff like that. We are keeping our ear to the ground every single day. So if you've got any questions as well or stuff you want us to talk about, tweet us. Just give us something else to chat about.
Yeah. And let us know if the accents are all right, you know what I mean? Like,
slow down. Probably talking far too fast. Like, just talking for me instead of talking to people that need to listen.
We'll see. Maybe we can get subtitles. Let's see if that works. But yeah, it's been a pleasure as always, mate. And hopefully this season I'll be able to beat you in the private league. I doubt it's going to happen. One of the things I was going to suggest, which we might need to do, is think of challenges that we can do together. Maybe every couple of weeks, just in terms of points tallies that we get over the course of those weeks. Maybe have some fun with that. But we'll maybe work on that going forward. But yeah, thanks again for watching the first ever video that we've done.
Beers FPL video. Done. First one.
Yeah, really exciting. Have good fun. Looking forward to a really exciting season. And yeah, hopefully, like we say every week, if we can get at least one video up, we'll definitely do that, and possibly two if we have time. But yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure, and hopefully catch you guys in the future.
Thanks for tuning in.